Hello, and welcome to the Postal Pleasures channel. Today we're going to do the second episode of our stamp collecting tools series, this time focusing on perforation gauges. So perforation gauges allow us to count the number of perforations or the spacing of perforations on a stamp. This is typically measured, or to be specific, it is always to be measured as the number of holes within 2 centimeters or 20 millimeters. You could certainly do this with a pair of calipers and maybe then take a picture and then count the holes if you wanted to do it that way. But perforation gauges are fairly inexpensive, anywhere from a couple of dollars for something like this one to maybe $25 for what I've seen of a fairly expensive one. I actually have one of those on my wish list, and it's not so much that it's so much better than, say, this, which is my everyday go-to, but it has some other features outside of perforation gauging that I would like to have, more specifically for US stamps. So there's 4 different varieties here. You can see, this series allows almost for infinite checking. Their perforations are usually either whole numbers or halves. And then this one goes, say, from a 7 to a 16.5. Some foreign stamps will get up into the low 20s sometimes. Some stamps will go, I've seen as low, even today I saw something as low as a 5. Maybe when you're going very low, you're better off just measuring and counting. This one, one of the features I like about this Uni-Safe one here is that it has a millimeter scale and an inch scale. And I use the millimeter scale quite often for measuring stamps, which is another important key to attributing stamps. What I like about this one, which is my go-to, is that not only can I do a typical check here, but I can also check stamps which are already carded up, because it has the perforation gauges around the outside, and then these inner ones are more essentially that are the same as the outside if I need to check additional ones. That can also be done with this clear view gauge. But it gets a little blurrier. Because this works fine for me, I don't typically pull this one out. But if I really needed to double check a quarter, because this one doesn't do quarters, I certainly would try this. These here, as you can see, there's no way for me to check that because it's not see-through. And the same with this one. These 3 are ones I've got when I'm buying lots of stamps that just came with some tools. Certainly good to have if I ever lose one of these. Talking more about this Uni-Safe, Unitrade one, I both love and hate them. I buy them several at a time because their plastic surface doesn't last very long for me. It starts to peel up. And what's interesting, and I just realized this today while making the video, in fact this is my second attempt making the video because I was so surprised as I went to display this, that as you can see here, when the plastic comes up on this one, there's no more information. So basically the scale and the perforation gauges are actually only on the plastic layer on top of the aluminum sheet, which then makes this almost worthless once it starts to come up. I can't really use this one anymore. But I looked at this one, exact same perforation gauge, I really don't see any differences, and on this one the plastic is just clear plastic and the perforation gauges are on the metal itself, which is a much better design. So I'll be taking the plastic off of that one and getting more use from it. This one, to be determined. I'm not going to rip the plastic off just to check, because in case it's not there. So how do we use the perforation gauge? When the stamp is loose, and a stamp can have different perforations based on the side, so often you'll be looking at a catalog and it's going to be telling you to check between the standard perforation of maybe an 11 by 11, and usually that'll just be called an 11 or an 11 by 11 and a half or something like that, if it's a combination perforation. So when you have 2 numbers, it's the horizontal is the first number and the vertical is the second number. I'm not sure what this one is, but let's take a look. Let me make sure I'm in here. So here, I like to line them up like this. Some people don't. It looks like I landed on it right away, which is surprising. So looks like a 12.5 to me. So I'm matching the points with the points, which then makes there some nice round holes to look at. That's a pretty clear 12.5. Turning this around, let's see if it's also a 12.5. No, see, these don't line up on 12.5. So is it a 12? No. Let's go to 13 then. Not looking into 13. Let's go back to 12 and a half. Maybe. I guess it does line up on 12 and a half, so I got a little confused. Now you can have a combination perforation within one side, but that's usually due to an error like bent pins or the changing of perforation pins during a run. So that's really unusual and more advanced stuff. So I won't dig into that now. So this one's a 12 and a half by 12 and a half. This one here from Hungary. I'll measure the horizontal first. It looks fairly small to me, so let's try a 15. Oh, and I've gotten, I believe, right on it again. So a 15 by, since I don't have a book I'm going from, I'm always going to check the same thing first. Yeah, a 15 by 15, so not a multiple perforation stamp. Not a multiple perforation size stamp, I should say. So that's how you use that kind. On this kind, let's see, 15 is my top. I'm not going to use that stamp. What do we say? This was 12 and a half. So I'll try to get this in the center here. Apologize, my dog is barking. Hopefully that won't last. I don't use this kind very often. I'm really kind of behind the stamp, so I can't see exactly what I'm doing. But essentially, you would lay this down on the scale, and you would set the lines to align with the very edge of one perforation, and then you would slide it up or down until you get the lines intersecting that same edge of every perforation on the stamp, and that would tell you the size. But again, I'm at an angle where I can't really use this in order to be able to film with you. Then this one here, again, this style, my dog is not going to quiet down. Again, we were 12 and a half, we know, and I'm just going to jump to it. We'll show you that I would slide in really just like that. So in this case, I'm putting those blue dots in the perforation hole, and we can see it's a nice match, unlike coming down, say, to 11 and a half, which is a full point off. And if I get them aligned on one side, you can see they quickly shift off. Or up here, say 14, get one aligned, and you can see again they quickly shift off. So I would love to hear about your favorite perforation gauges. I'm always interested in some new tools. So please tell me what you like to use and why. Thanks for watching.